Admiral Varthok stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Destroyer, watching the small human fleet drift through space like lost children. His 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he studied the tactical display. 12 ships. Only 12 pathetic vessels stood between the mighty Cridian Empire and 3 rich human colony worlds. The Cridians had conquered 17 star systems in the past century. Their warships were legendary across the galaxy, their warriors feared by every species they encountered. Varthok himself had overseen the subjugation of 6 alien civilizations. The humans would be the 7th, and likely the easiest. "These humans are weak," Commander Zalrek said from his station, his scaled face twisted in contempt. "Our intelligence reports show they have barely expanded beyond their home system, only 43 colony worlds in 300 years of space travel." Varthok nodded slowly. The intelligence was clear. Humans were researchers, diplomats, and merchants. They built libraries, while other species built armies. They wrote poetry, while empires rose and fell. They were soft, comfortable, and completely unprepared for real war. "Open a channel to the human fleet," Varthok commanded. His voice carried the weight of countless victories. The view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human flagship. A woman sat in the command chair, her dark hair pulled back from her face. She wore a simple gray uniform with minimal decoration. This was Captain Sarah Chen, according to their database. Young for a fleet commander, barely 50 years old. Her species lived for 2 centuries with modern medicine. So she was practically a child by command standards. "I am Admiral Varthok of the Cridian Empire," he began, his translator converting his words into the human language. "You have entered space claimed by the Empire. We demand immediate surrender of 3 colony worlds, New Harmony, Riverside, and Terra Verde. You have 1 standard hour to comply." The human captain looked at him with calm brown eyes. She did not flinch. She did not argue. Instead, something strange happened. Her lips curved upward in a gentle smile. "Admiral," she said, her voice steady and clear, "those worlds are home to 8 million human civilians. Families, children, artists, and farmers and teachers. You cannot seriously expect us to simply hand them over to an invasion force." "I do not expect," Varthok growled. "I demand. Refuse, and your fleet will be destroyed. Then we will take the worlds anyway, and your deaths will have meant nothing." To demonstrate his seriousness, Varthok gestured to his weapons officer. A cargo ship drifted several thousand kilometers from the human fleet, unmanned according to their scans. A single blast from the Crimson Destroyer's main cannon vaporized it instantly. The explosion blossomed in the darkness like a deadly flower. Captain Chen watched the destruction without expression. When she looked back at Varthok, that smile was still there. Not mocking, not fearful, just calm, and almost. "Thank you for the demonstration, Admiral," she said quietly. "I need to consult with my government. Would you grant us 24 hours to prepare our response?" Varthok laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. His crew joined him, scales rattling with amusement. 24 hours to prepare? What could they possibly prepare? An evacuation? A desperate defense that would delay the inevitable by minutes? "You may have your time, human," he said generously. 24 hours. Use them to make peace with your gods. When the time expires, we will expect your unconditional surrender. Refuse, and we will show you what real power looks like." The transmission ended. Varthok turned to his crew, satisfaction warming his chest. "Begin scanning those colony worlds. I want full tactical assessments ready. We will occupy them within the week." What the Admiral could not see was what happened next on the human ship. Captain Chen's smile faded the moment the transmission ended. Her expression became cold and hard as stone. She turned to her communications officer, a young man who looked nervous. "Lieutenant Park," she said quietly, "send the message." Yes, Captain. The young officer's fingers moved across his console. Message ready. What should I send? Captain Chen took a deep breath. She had hoped this day would never come. Humanity had spent 3 centuries trying to be better, trying to move beyond their violent past. They had built a civilization based on knowledge and cooperation instead of conquest. They had locked away their darkest weapons and sworn to never use them again unless absolutely necessary. The Cridians had just made it necessary. Protocol Nemesis, Chen said softly. Authorization, Chen 7 Alpha. Quote, they challenged us. They destroyed our property. They threaten our children. The vote must be taken. End quote. The message compressed into a quantum-encrypted burst and shot across space faster than light itself, splitting and replicating as it reached relay stations throughout human territory. Within minutes, it would reach Earth. Within hours, every human world would know that the unthinkable had been requested. Captain Chen stood from her chair and walked to the viewport. The Cridian fleet floated in the distance, hundreds of warships arranged in proud battle formations. They looked powerful. They looked unstoppable. They had no idea what they had just awakened. Captain? Lieutenant Park asked nervously. What happens now? Chen turned to face her crew. 26 men and women who trusted her with their lives. They deserved the truth. Now, she said quietly, we wait for humanity to decide if we stop smiling. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood. The smile had been a mask. A peaceful face humanity showed the galaxy while keeping their true nature hidden. The Cridians thought that face was weakness. They were about to learn differently. Outside, stars burned in the endless dark, indifferent to the storm that was coming. Admiral Varthok reviewed the intelligence reports on humanity with growing confidence. His analysts had done thorough work over the past decades, observing human behavior from hidden monitoring stations throughout their territory. The reports painted a clear picture. Humans expanded slowly, carefully, never taking more than they could properly manage. When they encountered other species, they offered trade agreements and cultural exchanges. When pirates attacked their merchant ships, they defended themselves, but never pursued the attackers back to their bases. When border disputes arose with neighboring civilizations, humans negotiated and compromised. They are philosophers, Varthok muttered, scrolling through records of human contact with dozens of species. Not warriors. Not warriors. But something bothered him. A small detail his analysts had noted but not explained. Every human ship, no matter how small, carried advanced encryption systems. Their communications were impossible to intercept. Their data networks had security that surpassed military-grade protection used by most galactic empires. Why would peaceful merchants need such extreme secrecy? Varthok pushed the thought aside. Fear, probably. Weak species often hid behind walls and codes, hoping to avoid notice from stronger neighbors. It meant nothing. What he did not know, what no alien species knew, was the truth about human history. The real reason humanity moved so carefully through the galaxy. On Earth, in a secure facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the Atlantic Ocean, alarms were screaming. The Nemesis protocol message had arrived, and the Terran Assembly was being summoned for an emergency session. Within 2 hours, representatives from all 43 human worlds gathered virtually, their holographic forms filling an ancient chamber. Chancellor Marcus Webb stood at the podium, his face grave. He was 130 years old enough to remember the last time humanity had considered activating the protocols. That crisis had been resolved peacefully. This one would not be. Members of the Assembly, he began. Captain Sarah Chen has requested activation of Protocol Nemesis. The Cridian Empire has threatened 3 of our worlds and demands their surrender. They have destroyed one of our vessels and given us 24 hours to comply. The vote must be taken. Silence filled the chamber. Every delegate knew what this meant. They had all studied the history, the reason the protocols existed at all. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself 6 times before reaching the stars. World War I killed 20 million. World War II killed 80 million. The nuclear close call of 2027 had almost ended everything when a computer error nearly launched 3,000 warheads. The genetic wars of 2089 created biological weapons so terrible that entire continents became uninhabitable for decades. Each time, humanity had pulled back from the edge of extinction. Each time, they had looked at what they had created and been horrified. The weapons were too powerful, too efficient, too terrible. Nations that hated each other found common ground in their shared fear of what they had built. When the faster-than-light drive was discovered in 2147, humanity made a collective choice. They would go to the stars, but they would leave their worst weapons behind. Not destroyed, that seemed foolish given the dangers of an unknown galaxy, but locked away, sealed behind layers of security. Controlled by artificial intelligence systems programmed with one directive: never allow these weapons to be used unless humanity itself faced extinction. The Nemesis protocols contained horrors that made nuclear weapons look primitive. Causality-disrupting missiles that struck targets in the past, before they could defend themselves. Nano-weapon swarms that could dismantle entire fleets at the molecular level. Gravitational lances that turned a ship's own mass against it, crushing it into a sphere the size of a marble. Quantum viruses that infected computer systems and turned enemy vessels into bombs. Biological agents that were never deployed but remained locked in digital vaults, their formulas guarded by AI that had standing orders to delete them if humanity ever fell to conquest. For 300 years, humanity had kept these secrets. They smiled and traded and built libraries because they knew what lived in their basement. They avoided war because they knew exactly how good they were at it. Chancellor Webb continued. The question before the Assembly is simple. Do we allow the Krydians to take our worlds, to enslave or kill 8 million civilians, or do we show them why humanity chose peace? Delegate Maria Santos from New Harmony spoke first, her voice shaking. My daughter lives on New Harmony. She is 7 years old. If we do nothing, she will grow up under Krydian rule, if they let her grow up at all. But if we activate the protocols, we become what we swore never to be again. We swore never to use these weapons on each other. Delegate James Chen from Mars replied. He was Captain Sarah Chen's uncle, and his face was hard with anger. The protocols exist for exactly this situation. An outside threat to humanity's survival. Is this truly an extinction threat? Asked Delegate Keiko Yamamoto from Titan. 3 worlds out of 43? Today it is 3 worlds, Chancellor Webb said quietly. Tomorrow it is 10. Next year it is all of them. The Krydians have conquered 17 systems. They will not stop with us. The question is not whether they threaten our existence, but whether we stop them before they do. The debate lasted 8 hours. Every delegate spoke. Some argued for diplomacy, for trying to negotiate, or seeking help from other galactic powers. Others pointed out that humanity had always been alone in the galaxy, respected but never truly befriended. No one would help them. No one even knew what humanity was capable of. Finally, the vote was called. One by one, delegates entered their decision. The count appeared on the main display. 43 votes. 43 in favor of activating Protocol Nemesis. The decision was unanimous. Chancellor Webb looked at the number and felt his heart grow heavy. So be it. Protocol Nemesis is active. Authorization code Webb 1 Prime. All Nemesis systems are released to military command. May whatever gods exist forgive us for what we are about to do. Across human space, weapons systems that had been dormant for 3 centuries began to wake. Artificial intelligence networks that had spent 300 years studying warfare activated. Ships that had seemed ordinary revealed hidden weapons bays. Factories on distant moons began producing ammunition for guns the galaxy had never seen. Captain Sarah Chen received the confirmation code on her personal terminal. She read it twice, then closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her face was calm. She had smiled at Admiral Varthok because she had hoped, desperately hoped, that he would back down, that he would see reason, that humanity could remain the peaceful species they had worked so hard to become. Now the smile was over. The Krydians had wanted to see what humanity could do. They were about to receive the most thorough education in human history, and they would survive it because humanity had also learned mercy. But they would never forget it. The 24 hours were almost over. Admiral Varthok watched the countdown timer reach 0 with satisfaction. 24 hours had passed. The human fleet remained in position. Those same 12 ships arranged in a loose defensive formation that any first-year tactical student would recognize as useless. Behind them, 3 human colony worlds waited, undefended and ripe for conquest. Status of the human fleet? Varthok demanded. No change, Admiral. Commander Zalrek reported. They have not moved. No additional ships have arrived. Their weapons are powered down. They appear to be waiting for us. Varthok allowed himself a moment of disappointment. He had hoped for at least a token resistance, something to make the victory memorable. Instead, the humans were simply giving up. Perhaps they were even more cowardly than the intelligence suggested. Bring the entire fleet to battle readiness, he ordered. All 317 ships. I want overwhelming force. When we are done here, I want every species in the galaxy to know what happens when you refuse the Krydian Empire. The Krydian Armada moved forward, a wall of steel and firepower that had crushed civilizations. Battleships the size of small cities. Carriers loaded with fighter craft. Cruisers bristling with weapons. They advanced in perfect formation, a demonstration of military precision that had taken centuries to develop. The human fleet waited, motionless, silent. They are not even running, Zalrek said with contempt. Admiral, this is beneath us. Let me take a single squadron. And, no, Varthok interrupted. I want them to see the full might of the Empire before they die. I want their last moment to be filled with the understanding of how badly they miscalculated. The distance closed. 10,000 kilometers, 5,000, 2,000. The Krydian weapons locked onto their targets. Varthok raised his hand, ready to give the order to fire. Then Captain Chen's face appeared on every view screen in the Krydian fleet. She was not smiling anymore. Admiral Varthok, she said, her voice cold and hard. You had your chance. We gave you 24 hours to reconsider, to back down, to choose peace. You chose war, so be it. But understand this. You challenged the wrong species. Varthok laughed. Brave words from a dead woman. Fire all. He never finished the command. The human ships changed. Panels slid open along their hulls, revealing weapon systems that had not appeared on any scan. Energy signatures spiked to levels that made the Krydian instruments scream warnings. And then everything happened at once. The first wave of missiles appeared from nowhere, already in the middle of the Krydian formation. They had not been launched, they simply existed, as if they had been there all along. Causality-disrupting weapons that struck their targets 5 seconds before they were fired. Exploiting quantum mechanics in ways that made the laws of physics weep, 40 Krydian cruisers exploded simultaneously. The second wave was worse. Clouds of gray mist erupted from the human ships, moving faster than any conventional weapon. Nanoswarms, each microscopic machine programmed with one task: dismantle. They flowed over Krydian vessels like water. But where they touched, metal turned to powder. Ships that had survived battles with a dozen enemy fleets simply came apart, their hulls dissolving, their systems failing, their crews desperately evacuating as their vessels became dust. 80 more ships gone in 30 seconds. Varthok stared in horror at his tactical display. The red icons representing his fleet were disappearing faster than he could count. Return fire, All ships, return fire, the Cridian fleet tried. Thousands of weapons discharged. Enough firepower to crack a planet. Energy beams and missiles and kinetic rounds converged on the human ships and stopped, simply stopped, frozen in space as if time itself had paused. Gravitational fields generated by the human vessels warped space so severely that incoming fire never reached its target, trapped in loops of distorted spacetime. Then, the gravitational lances fired. Invisible beams of concentrated gravity struck Cridian battleships, and the massive vessels imploded. Their own mass became their enemy, crushed inward by forces that turned ships into spheres of compressed matter no larger than a human fist. The crews never had time to scream. Shields! Maximum shields! Varthok shouted. It did not matter. The human weapons ignored shields. They operated on principles that Cridian science had never encountered. Quantum state manipulation. Causality violation. Molecular disassembly. Every weapon was impossible, and every weapon worked perfectly. In 7 minutes, 253 Cridian ships were destroyed or disabled. The pride of an empire, reduced to wreckage and debris. And still the human ships had not moved from their original position. Then something changed. The human attack stopped. The surviving Cridian vessels, including Varthok's flagship, found themselves intact, but powerless. Every system was offline, except life support. Weapons, engines, shields, communications, all dead. They floated helplessly in space, surrounded by the bodies of their destroyed comrades. Captain Chen's face appeared again on Varthok's view screen, the only thing still working on his bridge. "Admiral," she said quietly, "do you see those ships around you? The ones we destroyed? We could have done that to all of you. Every single vessel in your fleet could be debris right now. We chose not to." Varthok said nothing. His 4 eyes were wide with shock and terror. "Those are mercy strikes," Chen continued, gesturing to the disabled Cridian ships. "Precision weapons designed to neutralize threats without killing. We have weapons that could do far worse. We have biological agents that could exterminate your entire species. We have quantum viruses that could turn your fleet into bombs. We have gravitational mines that could collapse your home star. We chose not to use them." "Why?" Varthok whispered, his voice broken. "Why spare us?" "Because 300 years ago, my ancestors looked at what they had created and were horrified," Chen said. "They decided that having the power to destroy was not the same as having the right to destroy. They chose to be better. We have tried to honor that choice. We expanded slowly because we did not want to threaten anyone. We avoided conflict because we knew how good we were at it. We smiled because we hoped we would never have to stop smiling." She leaned forward, her eyes boring into Varthok's. "You thought our peace was weakness. You thought our restraint was cowardice. You were wrong. Our peace was a gift to the galaxy. You refused that gift. So now you get to live with the knowledge of what humanity can do when we stop holding back." Varthok looked at his ruined fleet, at the bodies floating in space, at the debris field that had been his pride. "What happens now?" "Now," Captain Chen said, "you go home. Your ships will be towed to the edge of our space. Your crews will be returned unharmed. And you will tell everyone what happened here. You will tell them that the humans are no longer smiling. You will tell them that we remain peaceful. But we are not weak. And you will tell them that the next species to threaten us will not receive mercy strikes." The transmission ended. Varthok slumped in his command chair, a defeated warrior in a dead ship. Around him, his surviving crew wept or stared in shock. They had challenged the Terran fleet, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they had been educated, and the lesson would never be forgotten. Outside, the 12 human ships began moving, heading toward the disabled Cridian vessels. They would keep their word. They would spare their enemies and send them home. Because humanity had learned mercy, along with war. But they had also learned that sometimes, mercy required a demonstration of power, and they had just provided one that would echo across the galaxy for centuries. The news spread through the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Within days, every spacefaring civilization knew what had happened at the edge of human territory. The recordings were everywhere, transmitted on every frequency, discussed in every language. The Krydian Empire, conquerors of 17 systems, had been defeated in 15 minutes. Not just defeated, humiliated. Their fleet had been torn apart by weapons no one had known existed, by a species everyone had dismissed as peaceful merchants and scholars. On the war world of Draxus, Warlord Ketharak watched the recordings for the 20th time. His crimson scales rippled with unease as he observed the human weapons at work. Nano swarms that dissolved metal. Gravitational lances that crushed battleships like insects. Causality-disrupting missiles that appeared to travel backward through time. "This is impossible," his chief scientist hissed. "These weapons violate every known principle of physics. The energy requirements alone should be—" "They are real," Ketharak interrupted, his voice low and dangerous. "We can see them. We can see what they did. The question is not whether they are possible. The question is why we never knew the humans possessed them." His tactical advisor, a scarred veteran of 40 campaigns, spoke carefully. "My lord, 3 months ago, we discussed raiding human colony worlds. We believed them to be weak targets, rich with resources, and poorly defended. Cancel those plans," Ketharak said immediately. "Cancel them and send an envoy to the humans. Offer trade agreements. Offer whatever they want. And pray they accept. Because if they decide, we are a threat." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening in 1,000 different languages. Species that had considered humanity an easy target suddenly reconsidered. Pirates who had preyed on human merchant ships vanished from human trade routes, finding safer prey elsewhere. Border disputes that had simmered for years were suddenly resolved in humanity's favor, with not a single complaint filed. The Thasian Trade Consortium held an emergency meeting on their orbital station above Thasos Prime. The consortium controlled 300 star systems through economic power rather than military might. They were merchants and negotiators, and they understood what they had just witnessed. "The humans have been operating under a false classification," Consortium Director Zelnoth announced to the assembled representatives. "We listed them as a Class 3 civilization, technologically advanced but militarily limited. That classification is obviously wrong. What should the new classification be?" asked a representative from the feline concordat. Zelnoth hesitated. Classifications ranged from Class 1, primitive species barely capable of space travel, to Class 10, ancient civilizations with godlike technology. The Krydians had been Class 7, a major military power. The humans had destroyed them effortlessly. Class 9, Zelnoth said finally. Possibly Class 10. We cannot be certain. We do not know the full extent of their capabilities. What we saw might be only a fraction of their true power. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Class 9 civilizations were rare. Ancient species that had spent millions of years developing their technology. Class 10 was theoretical beings so advanced they might as well be gods. Humanity had achieved faster than light travel only 300 years ago. How could they already possess such power? The answer, when it finally emerged from careful analysis of human history, was terrifying. Humanity had not slowly developed their weapons over millions of years. They had created them quickly, desperately, during centuries of warfare against themselves. While other species had expanded across the stars, fighting external enemies, humans had turned their intelligence inward, creating ever more efficient ways to kill each other. And then they had stopped. They had looked at what they created and chosen peace. They had locked their weapons away and pretended to be something they were not. On the ancient world of Zathara, The elders gathered in their crystalline council chamber. The Zetherans were old, one of the first species to achieve space travel, and they had watched countless younger civilizations rise and fall over millions of years. They rarely involved themselves in galactic affairs anymore, content to observe and remember. But they remembered humanity's arrival in the galactic community 3 centuries ago. They remembered the careful way humans had established contact, the excessive security measures, the refusal to share certain technologies. At the time, the elders had assumed fear or paranoia. Now they understood it had been restraint. They were protecting us, Elder Shirama said softly, her crystalline form glowing with bioluminescence. Not themselves. Us. They knew what they carried within them, and they chose to keep it locked away. Until they were forced to reveal it, Elder Kextal added. The Cridians gave them no choice. Attack or surrender. Fight or die. And now the galaxy knows, Shirama said. Every species that considered challenging humanity will reconsider. Every warlord with dreams of conquest will remember what happened to the Cridians. The humans have bought themselves peace through a demonstration of power. But at what cost? Kexal asked. They cannot hide anymore. They have shown their teeth. Will the galaxy accept them as the peaceful species they wish to be? Or will they be feared and isolated? The elders had no answer. They could only watch and wait, as they had done for millions of years. On Krydax Prime, the Cridian homeworld, the Empire was tearing itself apart. Admiral Varthok had been arrested upon his return, charged with incompetence and cowardice. The military command structure had collapsed as generals blamed each other for the disaster. 3 separate factions claimed leadership of the Empire, and civil war seemed inevitable. But beneath the chaos, something else was happening. Young Cridians were watching the battle recordings and asking questions. Why had the Empire attacked a peaceful species? Why had they threatened civilian worlds? Why had they believed conquest was honorable? A movement began, small at first but growing. Cridians who looked at the human victory and saw not just military superiority but moral superiority. The humans had won decisively and then spared their enemies. They could have exterminated the Cridian species but chose mercy instead. What kind of beings possess such power and such restraint? Varthok, imprisoned and awaiting trial, received visitors. Young Cridian officers who wanted to understand what had happened. He told them the truth. The same truth Captain Chen had told him. Humanity had chosen to be better than their nature suggested. They had developed terrible weapons and then hidden them away, hoping never to use them. They are not weak, Varthok told his visitors, his voice heavy with regret. They are stronger than any species I have encountered. Strong enough to hold back their own power. Strong enough to choose peace when they could choose dominance. We mistook that strength for weakness, and it nearly destroyed us. The young officers left his cell with new thoughts fermenting in their minds. Perhaps the Cridian Empire needed to change. Perhaps conquest was not the only path to greatness. Perhaps there was another way. Perhaps there was another way. Across the galaxy, humanity's action had created ripples that would spread for generations. They had revealed their secret, showed their teeth, and demonstrated that the deadliest predator was the one who had learned not to hunt but never forgotten how. And the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. 6 months had passed since the battle that changed everything. The galaxy had adjusted to its new reality, though the adjustment had been uncomfortable for everyone involved. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the main hall of the Galactic Council Station, a massive structure that orbited neutral space between 3 major civilizations. She had been invited to address the council, something that had never happened to a human before. Humanity had always been observers, welcomed, but never truly important. Now they were the focus of every eye in the chamber. Representatives from 247 species filled the tiered seating. Some were humanoid, some were crystalline, some were clouds of gas held in containment fields. All of them watched Chen with expressions ranging from respect to fear to calculation. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What would humanity do now? Chen wore her simple gray uniform, the same one she had worn during the confrontation with Varthok. She carried no weapons, no symbols of power. She did not need them. Everyone in the chamber knew what she represented. "Honorable delegates," she began, her voice amplified throughout the massive hall. 6 months ago, the Krydian Empire challenged humanity. They demanded we surrender 3 of our worlds. They threatened 8 million civilians. They gave us a choice between submission and destruction. The chamber was completely silent. Everyone knew this story, but they needed to hear it from her. "We chose a third option," Chen continued. "We revealed what we had kept hidden for 300 years. We showed the galaxy our weapons, our true capabilities, our nature, and I know that revelation has frightened many of you. Some species have withdrawn diplomatic contact. Some have fortified their borders against us. Some have sent envoys begging for alliances and protection. All of you are wondering what humanity will do next." She paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of faces watching her. "Nothing," she said simply. "We will do nothing different than what we have always done. We will trade fairly. We will honor our agreements. We will pursue knowledge and art and cooperation. We will remain the peaceful species we have been for 3 centuries. The only thing that has changed is that now you know we choose peace, rather than having peace chosen for us." A delegate from the Serpentine hegemony, a species known for their aggressive expansion, spoke up. "But you possess weapons that could destroy any of us. How can we trust that you will not use them? The same way we trusted you not to destroy us when we appeared weak." Chen replied calmly. "Trust is not about capability. It is about intent. We had these weapons when we first entered the galactic community 300 years ago. We could have conquered half the galaxy by now if that was our goal. We did not. That should tell you our intent." Another delegate, this one from the Avian Collective, chirped a question through their translator. "But you did use them. You destroyed a Krydian fleet." "We disabled a Krydian fleet," Chen corrected. "We used what we call mercy strikes, weapons designed to neutralize threats without killing. Of the 317 ships that attacked us, we completely destroyed 47. The rest were disabled, and their crews returned home alive. We could have killed every Krydian in that fleet. We chose not to. That choice defines us more than our weapons ever could." Elder Shirama, representing the ancient Zetheron Council, spoke in her melodic voice. "Captain Chen, you speak of choice and restraint, but the galaxy has seen what happens when humanity feels threatened. Some species wonder if they might accidentally trigger such a response. How do we know where the line is?" Chen nodded, acknowledging the legitimate concern. "That is a fair question, Elder. Let me be clear about where that line exists. Humanity will not respond with force to trade disputes, to border disagreements, to competition for resources, or to diplomatic conflicts. We will negotiate, we will compromise, we will seek peaceful solutions, as we always have." She paused, her expression hardening slightly. "But if you threaten our civilians, if you demand surrender of our worlds, if you give us a choice between submission and annihilation, then yes, we will respond with force, and we will win. That is not a threat, it is a promise. We hope no one ever forces us to keep it." The chamber erupted in discussion, delegates conferring with each other in a dozen languages. Finally, the Council Arbiter, a neutral AI with no species affiliation, called for order. "Captain Chen," the AI said in its emotionless voice, "the Council has debated humanity's new status extensively. Some members argue you should be censured for hiding your capabilities. Others argue you should be celebrated for your restraint. The Council has reached a decision. Humanity will be offered full Council membership with voting rights and a permanent seat. Do you accept?" Chen felt a surge of surprise. Permanent Council seats were reserved for the most powerful and influential civilizations. Only 17 species held them. This was a dramatic shift in humanity's galactic status. On behalf of humanity, I accept, she said formally. We will honor the responsibilities that come with this position, the Arbiter continued. Additionally, 12 species have formally requested defensive alliances with humanity. They seek your protection against potential threats. How does humanity respond? Read. 2. Read. This was the question Chen had been dreading. Becoming the galaxy's protector would mean abandoning the quiet isolation humanity had maintained. It would mean involving themselves in conflicts they had avoided for centuries. But it would also mean building genuine relationships with other species, becoming part of the galactic community, rather than remaining on its edges. Humanity is willing to discuss defensive alliances, Chen said carefully, but with conditions. We will not fight wars of aggression. We will not help anyone conquer or expand at others' expense. We will only intervene to prevent extinction-level events or mass atrocities. If those terms are acceptable, we are open to negotiations. More discussion filled the chamber. But Chen could see acceptance in most faces. Her terms were reasonable, even generous. Humanity was offering protection without demanding submission or tribute. After the session ended, Chen found herself approached by a familiar figure. Admiral Varthok, no longer in uniform, no longer commanding anything. He had been released from Krydian custody as part of a massive political reform sweeping through the Krydian Empire. He looked older now, humbled by defeat and time. Captain Chen, he said quietly, may I speak with you? Admiral, she replied neutrally. What can I do for you? I wanted to apologize, Varthok said, his 4 eyes meeting hers steadily. Not for the battle that is done, and I accept the consequences. But for what I said before it began. I called you weak. I threatened your civilians. I believed might gave me the right to take whatever I wanted. Ever. He paused, choosing his words carefully. My government has asked me to establish a new Krydian military academy. We are rebuilding our society, trying to learn from our mistakes. I have been teaching young officers about that day. About what true strength means. About the difference between power and wisdom. What do you tell them? Chen asked. I tell them about a species that developed weapons terrible enough to threaten the galaxy, and then chose to hide them away, Varthok said. I tell them about humans who could have become conquerors, but became philosophers instead. I tell them about the day the Krydians learned that the deadliest predator is the one who has learned not to hunt, but never forgotten how. He straightened slightly, his posture formal. I tell them about the day we challenged the Terran fleet, and the humans smiled, and everything changed. I tell them that humanity's smile was a warning we were too arrogant to heed, and I make sure every Krydian officer understands that if they ever see that smile again, they should choose peace. Chen looked at the former admiral, seeing genuine understanding in his eyes. This was what she had hoped for. Not just military victory, but changed hearts and minds. Then you are teaching the right lessons, Admiral, she said quietly. And perhaps the galaxy will learn them too. She turned to leave, then paused and looked back. For what it is worth, Admiral, I hope we never have to stop smiling again. War should always be the last resort, even for those who are good at it. Especially for those who are good at it. Number 5. Warshoj. Number 5. Varthok bowed his head in acknowledgement, and Chen walked away, back toward her ship and the life she had chosen. Outside the station, stars burned in the endless dark, indifferent to the struggles of the civilizations that moved between them. But among those civilizations, something had changed. Humanity had revealed its nature, and the galaxy had accepted it. They would be feared, yes, but also respected. And perhaps, in time, understood. The humans had stopped smiling for a moment, and in that moment, they had taught the galaxy the most important lesson of all. That true strength lies not in the weapons you wield, but in the wisdom to know when to use them, and the courage to choose mercy when you can afford to destroy. It was a lesson the galaxy would not forget.